Acts chapter 5. An interesting story, and one that's, in some ways, is a little hard to decide what do we do with this. You remember that Barnabas had kind of, I don't know that it's fair to say that he kicked it off, but Luke records that Barnabas, characteristic of his nature, the son of encouragement. Remember, he sold a piece of property and he brought the proceeds to the apostles for them to distribute to people who had need. Well, evidently, a couple in the church whose names were Ananias and Sapphira, evidently they saw that scored some social, spiritual points. I don't know. It doesn't say what they thought. I'm just reading into it, right? And I could be totally wrong, but it kind of makes sense to me. So they sold a piece of property and they held some of the proceeds back for themselves and they brought it to the apostles' feet as though it was the entire amount. Well, here's let's go back to verse 4. It said, Peter says, didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God. When Ananias, verse 5, when Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm pretty sure that there's a couple of lessons here. One is generosity is a good thing. The other is lying to God is way not a good thing. I am not aware of any congregations where this has happened again. And frankly, there's nothing in the whole rest of the book of Acts about anything like that happening again. So why would God, all right, did God kill Ananias? Or, I don't know what to say. Did he die of a stroke or a heart attack or what? I don't know. It doesn't say. It just says, when he heard this, he fell down and died. Well, the next sentence, and great fear seized all who heard what had happened. You think? Verse 6, then some young men came forward, wrapped up his body, and carried him out and buried him. I mean, boy, what do you do? Great fear seized all who heard what had happened. If you or I had been there, wouldn't there have been a sense of fear? For me, it probably would have been high anxiety on the border of panic. What just happened? And because of my poor nature, I would next question, I hope only silently, I hope I'm not next. But it was clear to these people, this was not normal. And the text doesn't even indicate that, boy, they needlessly were afraid. Aren't there times when when Christians, I'm not going to accuse you, but I know I would say this of me, we sometimes get so casual with God, he's just, we're tight. I forget. He will not tolerate lies. And in this situation, I don't know that God struck him dead, but I don't know how else to explain it. Thinking about looking at this event, I'm thinking God doesn't tolerate lies, and in this case, liars. So why do people get away with it all the time? I mean, I know of people who have made way bigger lies than what Ananias made, and they're still living. Well, I can't really reconcile all this. I can't explain it fully to my satisfaction anyway. What I can say is those two lessons are worth noting. Generosity is good. Lying, way bad. And there's a sense in which, I talked about this before, when you lie to a person, you're lying to God. Verse 7, about 3 hours later, his wife came in. This is Sapphira, not knowing what had happened. Excuse me. Peter asked her, "Tell me, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land?" "Yes," she said, "that's the price." Wrong response. Verse 9, Peter said to her, "How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also." At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. Then the young men came in, and finding her dead, carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Verse 11, great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. So do you think God was in heaven going, "Oh, jeepers, that really freaked him out. I maybe shouldn't have done that"? I don't think he was. I think he was in heaven going, do you get the message? Verse 12, the apostles performed many signs and wonders among the people, and all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. This was a part of the temple. Verse 13, no one else dared to join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their number. Well, we got to keep going with verse 15 to get the context. As a result, people brought the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and mats so that at least Peter's shadow might fall on some of them as he passed by. Do you get that? Crowds gathered also from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented by impure spirits, and all of them were healed. Now, okay, quick contrast. Apparently, the power of God was so working through Peter that the Spirit of God and all of God's power were working within and through Peter, that his shadow falling on people healed them. We're not talking about a tent revival here with an evangelist that's got a pouffant haircut and a smooth presentation. We're talking about a guy walking down a street. The reputation of the church and Peter grew incredibly. The apostles, back to verse 12, performed many signs and wonders among the people. Now, it wasn't just Peter, but I have this sense that Peter was kind of the I hesitate to use this word because the church is not and never was a pyramid scheme, but he was at the peak of the pyramid, if there was a pyramid. Anyway, I think he represented the lead guy for First Church of Jerusalem. But it wasn't just him doing these signs and wonders. It was the apostles. I talked about this before. I'm not a big fan of a movement today, and it's not just today, but it's been around and is around today among Christians. I think many perhaps are sincere Christians. Maybe all of them are. I think, though, when they designate someone as an apostle, that doesn't work for me. It wasn't like, well, anybody here want to be an apostle? We can put you through our apostle training process. We can vet you out, and then we'll give you No. There's every reason to believe that this was 12 men, specific men, an exclusive group. And they weren't trying to be exclusive, but they had been selected by Jesus and designated by God as apostles. All right. It's funny how, in some ways, it's funny to me that these two sentences are connected. The apostles performed many works, signs, and wonders among the people, and all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. I can tell you why they went to Solomon's colonnade. A portion of the temple is the only place in town big enough to hold. The last number that Luke records for us is 5,000. That's a lot of people. And we may not realize sometimes that the temple was that big. And a colonnade was an area, and it probably was an open air area within the temple that you could get, I think you could easily get 5,000 people. And imagine that these were adult peoples that Luke had numbered. I don't think they left their kids with babysitters. I think there were, we just don't know enough. I want to know. Tell me more about, or when you got together, what did you do? Did you have a band? I'm pretty sure they didn't have a fog machine. I am positive they didn't have a light show. And I'm an old guy. I'm not real fond of that. I don't think the people that are doing it are worshiping the devil, but I'm just saying I'm not fond. Verse 13. This is an interesting statement. No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Why? Why would nobody else dare to join them? Well, there was that thing with Ananias and Sapphira, and that might make a person a little hesitant to join them. Well, look at verse. Well, there's a thing here. Though they were highly regarded by the people, okay, they saw in these believers character and qualities of life. They respected them. They were highly regarded by the people. I don't think these first Christians were, they didn't wear crosses, and they didn't hold up a banner, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. They simply lived in a way that demonstrated, I guess I would say proved, they were believers and belonged to Jesus. We're going to pick it up next time at verse 14 just because it's there. All right. See you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.